Okay. All right. Here we go. Welcome to Keeping It Real, the largest podcast made for real estate agents and by real estate agents. My name is DJ Paris. I'm your guide and host through the show. Today, as always, is our monthly series called the Monday Market Minute with Carrie McCormick from the Carrie McCormick Real Estate Group with At Properties here in Chicago. Carrie, is a top one. She's more than a top 1% producer. She's a top 0.001% producer in Chicago with over 20 years of experience helping buyers, sellers, and investors. And just to show you how much production she does, there's about 47,000 realtors in the Chicagoland area. Carrie is often ranked in literally the top 15, sometimes the top 10, sometimes higher than that. So she is an amazing superstar. And she is an expert in everything from first-time home buyers, veteran investors, and luxury properties. She also works with a lot of developers and is often chosen to represent their high-end developments. Please visit Carrie at her website, carriemccormickre.com. And also, please follow her on Instagram, Carrie McCormick Real Estate. We will have a link to that in the show notes. And by the way, Carrie's Instagram or her social media in general is so effective that she was just recently nominated for best realtor social media in Chicago. And you can actually vote for her by going to the link in our show notes for Chicago Agent Magazine. So if you like Carrie and love listening to her episodes, please consider voting for her. She's actually social media influencer of the year. So check that out and vote for her, please. All right, Carrie, welcome once again to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm just trying to think, how long have I been on your show?
5 or 6, well, ever since the beginning. So I think it's
Okay.
been at least 5 years. I think 6 years.
I think back to the beginning. So thank you for having me. And I love being part of it and sharing my knowledge and listening to all of your guests as well. I think it's a great community to be part of. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome and thank you. And whenever I run into agents here locally in the Chicago land market, they always reference your episodes in particular because you are so well respected and regarded in Chicago and, of course, elsewhere. But it is always fun, because I don't do so many Chicago episodes anymore. And so it's nice to, when I run into people, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you have Carrie on the show every month. Like you're very much looked up to in this industry. So what would you like to talk about today?
Well, we're in the fall market here in Chicago, and we're in Q3, and I feel like negotiations on deals have been changing a little bit. So, there's all different types of negotiation strategies, and as everyone knows, each deal is different. We have a lot of different personalities in the deal, the sellers, the buyers, the brokers obviously are involved. Families sometimes get involved. So there's just a lot of personalities. And I just wanted to share some tips that I have and that have been successful for me in negotiating and creating a win-win for both. I mean, I think that's a common term that people say is, everyone feels like they want to win, or if both sides are upset, you've got a great negotiation going. But, there's ways to strategize and get to the finish line. So I thought it'd be helpful to share what I know. And the first one is to figure out what the other side wants and what drives them to be making these decisions. So in our industry, obviously, it's buying and selling a home. So think about your first showing with the person. That's your time to really interact with that buyer or the seller and the broker to ask questions. Obviously, we're there to sell the home, but throughout that process, we can ask questions that are about, where do you live? Where are you currently living now? What do you not like about your house? Is it too small? Is it too big? And obviously don't ask the way I'm asking them now, but you learn about their family. You learn if they're renting. This is going to help formulate if they are to make an offer on your listing, is now you've got a little bit of background on them, right? And again, it's about leveraging your position, but it's also the point of it is figuring out what they want and what drives them, right? So if they're renting, or again, if they're in a house in the neighborhood and they're having a child and schools are important to them, They really want a playroom. Again, asking the right questions is going to lead to understanding your position when it comes to negotiating. And you learn what's personally important to them, right? I also think it's a good idea to not only understand what the buyers or sellers want, but also you're in front of their representative, their broker. So, learn a little bit about that broker. What's their negotiating style like? What is their track record? Have they sold in the neighborhood? Do they understand the comps? Maybe that broker doesn't really know the Lincoln Park single family home market. So you can be an advocate to them and say, hey, listen, I know that you haven't sold a lot of homes in Lincoln Park. So I went ahead and I prepared the CMA for you, Mr. Broker. This might help just kind of show you what the last 6 months have looked like here.
Wow. So I just want to pause for a second because that is a very, very interesting. I'm curious. So basically, you have a buyer and you're bringing them to a listing, and then you can do some due diligence on the listing agent, and you
Mhm.
can actually see if they've sold homes via the MLS in that market before. If you don't recognize the name, or if it's somebody that doesn't have a track record, you then will reach out and say, "Hey, I know you may be new to this area, or not as familiar with it. Here's some information that might help you." And is that usually well received? Because I could see agents getting offended by that, but I guess it's all in how you present it.
It's the delivery of the information, right? And yes, I'm sure some people would get offended by that, but it's not in a it's just more of an educational, but I really don't go that route unless I know my client's interested in the home. I'm
Got it.
not going to go do all that due diligence. But
Sure.
and again, the showing process is kind of like an interview process, right? Because especially if I'm with a buyer, and well, let me just reverse that. I've had buyers come into my listing and they're very difficult, right? They rip apart the home like, oh my God, look at the way that this looks. This person isn't taking care of the home. And you can just tell with the personality, they don't like it, or, they're going to be difficult, or, so you just kind of need to observe and understand, what is the buyer? Maybe the buyer wants to gut the kitchen, so I know now that when they come in with an offer, it's going to be lower because they need to factor in their costs. So again, during this showing process, of course, our job is to sell the home and highlight everything, but be observant, ask the right questions. So if that person was to make an offer on your home, you do have a little more information of what's important to them, what drives them, and how to successfully get to a reasonable, price when they make the offer. The other one is, which I think is very important. I'm primarily what we call a seller's broker. I represent sellers, right? So understanding what my leverage is, right? So if I have a listing that's on a wide lot, modern finishes, in a great school district, and there is nothing else on the market like that in Lincoln Park, I'm just making up a story. Um, I know what my leverage is in this market, right? So when I'm there presenting the home, again, I can point out all of these facts and my cost per square foot, the age of the home, the attributes that my home has that no other home has. If my home has everything every other home has, I'm not going to bring it up. I don't have any leverage because there's 10 other homes in the market that have the sub-zero fridge up, right? But if my home is the only home that has X, I am definitely going to make sure I point that out and point it out that I am the only home that has X. That's my leverage, right? So again, understanding what that buyer wants and then knowing what my leverage points are, make sure that I highlight those during my showing. And these are all very done obviously professionally and in good spirit, but again, the underlying message is preparing for that negotiation and preparing to get the house sold. Um, the other one I wanted to mention is, I love this one, is agree on when you get an offer, agree on the easy stuff at the beginning. And what I mean by that, obviously price is always going to be the contentious point of a negotiation, but agree on the small stuff, whether it's a closing date, not that that's small stuff, but a closing date, or their pre-approval letter, or I don't know, whatever it is. If there's small stuff that they're negotiating, just agree on that stuff. It just sets the tone for a nice negotiation. Two examples that I just had recently is we were kind of in this standoff of $100,000 apart on a deal. I'm on the seller side. The natural thing is to meet in the middle, right? And that's kind of everyone's, oh, just let's meet in the middle, win-win. And so I prepped my seller for that. I said, listen, we're $100,000 apart on a multi-million-dollar deal. It's peanuts at this point. The buyer's going to come back and split the difference, right? And he's like, oh, okay, a typical negotiation, right? The buyer came back with 60,000 instead of splitting the difference.
Mm-hmm.
And the broker said, we're doing this to show good faith that we're a good buyer and we want to get it done. And I thought, what a great move he just made.
Smart.
It was $10,000, but what that did was my seller was so happy with this buyer and said, let's take it. I mean, it was done, deal, sealed, and delivered. Now we're going to go into negotiations of inspection items. Well, what did that seller or the buyer just do? Sorry. He set himself up that if anything comes up in negotiations, my seller now thinks he's $10,000 ahead of that split in the middle thing. He may give into it. But anyways, I just thought it was a brilliant.
Oh, I didn't think about that. That's
Yeah.
great as
Brilliant
well.
move.
Yeah.
If that guy's listening,
Brilliant
brokers
move.
listening, he did a brilliant move. Another thing that just happened, which I also thought was brilliant, which came from me, so I have to take credit for my brilliance, is I did a showing and the client fell in love with a chair. Loved this chair, and so when they made the offer right out the gate, we said, thank you for the offer. We understand how much you love that chair. We just want to give you the chair. If you buy the house, we want to give you the
Right.
chair.
Yeah, yeah.
And the buyer was so happy. And we set that tone of that negotiation in a good spirit. The
Yeah.
buyer thought that was so thoughtful. The broker came back to me and says, okay, now what do you guys want? And I said, nothing. We don't want anything. I mean, obviously we're going to negotiate, but that was just a good gesture. My client knew how much you guys love that chair. It's not going to fit into their new home. If we come to an agreement, no strings attached, we want you to have the chair.
And that really requires you as the listing agent paying attention to the buyer and noticing, ooh, there's something we could do something for them, because it's probably not that common that a buyer walks in and goes, oh my God, I got to have that chair. Because they're obviously thinking, they're going to
Mhm.
probably replace all the stuff that's movable anyway. But I
Right.
guess when you hear that, that's an opportunity for you to come back, because people get so emotionally tied to things.
They do.
And yeah, and that is a great way, especially furniture. I mean, furniture is a thing we get really excited about when we see a
Mhm.
piece that really is like, that would look cool in my place. So
Yeah.
so those are two unbelievably
Yeah.
great
But
suggestions.
it's
So
operating from a place of goodwill, right? So,
yeah,
and understanding again in the beginning of a negotiation, what is your purpose? What is your leverage? What the buyer wants, what the seller wants, and you can convey all of that and be strategic. And of course, at the end of the day, you want to we're fiduciaries to our client. We want to get, the best deal possible. But there's ways to kind of maneuver that where everyone comes out of the negotiation feeling good about it. And that's what we want. We want everyone to feel like they won.
and do you often, if you don't, maybe often, if you don't know what the other side wants, I guess this is where good relationships come in, where you could talk to the the buyer's broker and
Mhm.
have those conversations of, yes, okay, we'll negotiate the price, but what are there any little things that we can agree upon now to get them out of the way? I love that.
Yeah, no, it's easy. And my last tip to you, this one I say exercise with caution, with severe caution, is sometimes we need to put the decision makers in a room together. Not physically, but maybe sometimes over the phone. I have done it in the past physically, which worked out really well, but you do have to be careful. And when I say the decision makers, I mean the buyers and the sellers. Because sometimes the agents, there's a lot of phone tag, right, that happens through the negotiation process. Sometimes there's a lot of things that get misinterpreted based on an email tone or text tone or voicemail tone or whatever it is. So I've had some negotiations that I've just put the buyer and seller together with us present, of course, on a phone call together. And like I said, I've had them face to face as well. Sometimes when you have the decision makers together, you have a very successful outcome. I'd say every time I've done it, I've had a very successful outcome where, like they're friends now. And it just, especially when you're dealing with certain personalities, it does work. But that's where you have to know your client and you have to understand and to know if it's a good idea. So that's why I say exercise with caution. But if you feel you're at a point with good personalities, you deals can be done, getting the decision makers in the room.
It's a great idea because we humans are wired for connection. And so we're wired to get along mostly. So when you get two people who are in kind of an adversarial position, competing against each other, negotiating
Mhm.
against each other, and you're able to bring them into a room and it's not a contentious environment, hopefully, then they actually, like you said, they actually bond closer together. They end up probably liking each other a little bit more, at least, than they
They
did
do.
before, and they end up wanting to work together and get the deal closed. So I think those are all wow. This is a great episode. Let's cap it there because those
Okay.
were those were three amazing things. And
But
Carrie's got
wait,
to
I've got
go.
more. No, I'm just
Go
joking.
ahead.
No,
Oh,
I'm
you
just
do. Okay.
joking.
Well,
That's
that's
fine.
enough because we'll save it. We'll save other things for next episodes. And boy, those are three amazing tips. So great negotiation tips there for our audience. Please consider using that. Carrie uses these herself, and she is incredibly successful. So it would behoove everyone to consider implementing some of these into their process. And please, a couple of things too. Please remember to follow Carrie on Instagram. So you can find her at Carrie McCormick Real Estate. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. Her website's Carrie McCormick RE. And if you are an agent in another part of the country, Carrie works the Chicagoland area, but maybe you have clients that move to Chicago, she would love the opportunity to partner with you. And also, she has clients that move out of Chicago.
Mhm.
So if you are an agent that would like to maybe connect with Carrie, you can do that. Hit her up on Instagram, or you can email her. She's super easy to find. Just Google Carrie McCormick. And also, if you are an agent, Carrie has a team, and if you think you would be a good addition to Carrie's team, certainly feel free to reach out. And if she has any openings or any opportunities, she will let you know. And also, let's remember to vote for her for Influencer of the Year with Chicago. I will have a link to that in the show notes. So even if you are not a Chicago broker, you can still vote. So we will have a link to that in the show notes. So please do that. Support our guests and our fellow hosts like Carrie. And guys, let us also know what you would like Carrie to talk about on future episodes. She is going to be giving away, her processes. So she is an incredibly high producing agent. So let us know what you would like to see from or hear from her. And on behalf of the audience, thank you, Carrie. As per usual, she's been with us since the very beginning. We love having her on, and she is just a part of the show. So we're so grateful for you. On behalf of the audience, thank you. And on behalf of Carrie and myself, thanks to the audience. And please remember to tell a friend. Think of just one other agent, everybody that could benefit from maybe somebody who needs some negotiation help. Send them a link to this episode. And, just any podcast directory has our links, or you can send them to our website, keepingitrealpod.com. By the way, we just crossed over 3 million downloads. So thank you to everybody for listening, continuing to support our show. Please also support our sponsors. They're the reason we can keep doing these. So anyway, we will see everybody on the next episode. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.